The drawer was empty. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the silence. Not the fact that her phone was still charging in the hallway. Not the untouched breakfast. Not even the sticky note on the fridge that read, in her handwriting, "Don't look for me." It was the drawer. The second one down in our shared dresser. The one with her sleep shirts, old university hoodies, and that ridiculous t-shirt with a cartoon goat that said, "Eat trash, get hit by a car," all gone. Every stitch. No fights. No warnings. No slammed doors. Just absence. Bryony was gone. I stood there holding a single unmatched sock like it was evidence in a crime scene. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even beating fast. I felt nothing, which terrified me more than panic would have. That was 5 years ago, and in those 5 years, I never spoke her name out loud. Never told anyone what happened. Never filed a missing person report. That's the part that makes people raise their eyebrows when I explain. They ask, "But weren't you worried about her?" No, because she didn't disappear like someone in danger. She disappeared like someone escaping. And maybe that's what broke me the most. I didn't even ask why. I just took her silence as the final message and let the world swallow me whole. Moved into a basement rental beneath a laundromat. Started working night security at a shut-down mall that only opened twice a year for liquidation events. Ate the same tuna sandwich every single day until I stopped tasting it. I turned into a ghost. Then last Friday, I got a call. Blocked number. Male voice. 2 sentences. "Come to room 815. Easton Hotel. Midnight. She'll be there." I almost threw my phone in the trash. I should have. I should have kept living my quiet, invisible life. But instead, I sat on the edge of my mattress until 11:03 p.m., then put on my least wrinkled shirt and went. I expected a setup. A scam. A cruel prank. What I didn't expect was her. Sitting in a hotel chair, champagne in one hand, tears on her cheek, and a limpness to her posture I'd never seen before. Bryony. Looking like someone had rewound her life and left her stuck in the static. The second she saw me walk through the door, she stood up, or tried to. Her knees buckled. She hit the floor hard. Collapsed. Security rushed in. Lights came on. A man behind a curtain screamed something about medical help. I stood there, frozen. No one even realized I was the reason she went down like that. And all I could think was, why now? Why like this? What secret was so big, it broke her when she saw me alive? Because here's the kicker. I never told her what I'd done after she left. I never told anyone. And I think she just found out. The moment Bryony collapsed, everything erupted into chaos, but I stayed still, like a glitch in the scene. Hotel staff flooded in. A woman in a headset shouted for medics. A man in a dark suit whispered into a lapel mic and pulled me aside like he knew exactly who I was. Like this was expected. I hadn't said a single word. Hadn't shown an invitation. But somehow they knew I was him. Room 815 was a suite, a luxurious one. Not the kind Bryony used to stay in for work trips. This had fresh orchids, not plastic plants. Gold trim, not chrome. Whoever had brought her here hadn't spared a dime. And that man behind the curtain? I finally saw him clearly when the paramedics wheeled Bryony out. He stepped forward like a villain from a legal drama. Tailored jacket, no tie, jaw like a rock. He didn't introduce himself. Just looked me up and down and said one word. "You're late." I blinked. "Excuse me." He gestured to the now empty hotel suite. "She's been asking for you for weeks. And now look at her." "What the hell is going on?" I asked. My voice came out cracked, like I hadn't used it in months, which honestly wasn't far from the truth. He sighed like I was the one being unreasonable, then reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. It had my name on it. Not my current name, not the alias I used in Larchmere. No, it had Marlen, my real name, the one I hadn't heard aloud since I left. Inside was a single photograph. Bryony, holding a toddler. Next to her, Weston, the same Minter she used to message at night while telling me I was being insecure. The one who laughed too hard at her jokes. The one I once watched rest his hand on her lower back for 3 seconds too long at a fundraising gala. In the photo, Weston's arm was around her waist. The kid looked about 4. I didn't need a DNA test to know what I was seeing. My hands trembled, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. What I felt was worse than anger, that cold, hollow nothing that eats you alive from the inside out. "She's dying," the man said flatly. "That's why she asked to see you." My ears rang. "What?" He looked bored. It's not public. But yes, you disappeared for 5 years. But her condition started 2 years ago. Diagnosis last fall. Terminal. She wanted to tell you herself. You ruined that. I could have punched him. I should have. But again, I just stood there like a prop. You people are sick, I whispered. He turned away. We're not the ones who ran off without a trace. We didn't vanish without saying goodbye. I wanted to scream that she told me to, that she left me. But none of it mattered. Because apparently, this was now about a kid. A diagnosis. A story someone had rewritten in my absence. The man turned back before leaving. There's more. She wanted you to know the truth. Not about Weston. About the night she left. I narrowed my eyes. What truth? He paused, smirked, then said, she thought you were going to die. And just like that, he was gone. I was left standing in a hotel room that smelled like lilies and lies, holding a photo of a child that might be mine, and a memory of a woman who once told me not to look for her, now begging for my face one last time. But she should have known something about me. If I disappear once, I come back twice as dangerous. I didn't leave the hotel room right away. For nearly 20 minutes, I stood there staring at the photograph. Bryony, Weston, and the child between them. A little boy in a red jacket, his curls windswept, mid-laugh. Something about his eyes made my throat tighten. That weird mix of awe and confusion you feel when you see a ghost that looks like you. I kept replaying that man's words in my head. She thought you were going to die. What the hell did that mean? Was that supposed to justify everything? Her silence? Her vanishing act? The child she raised with a man she swore was just a friend? How could she think I was dying when I was perfectly healthy the day she told me to disappear? Unless I wasn't. I left the hotel and walked for hours. I didn't even know what city I was in. That's how far I'd pulled myself away from the old life. I just kept moving, circling through streets that looked familiar but wrong, until I found myself outside a building I hadn't seen since I left, Memorial Park Medical Center. My chest went cold, because suddenly, like someone turned a switch in my brain, I remembered. 3 weeks before she told me to disappear, I had collapsed on the kitchen floor. Dizzy, clammy, vomiting bile. I remember Bryony calling an ambulance and riding with me. I remember blurred lights and cold metal tables. I remember someone saying the words, aggressive markers, advanced stage. But I also remember the second opinion, the one I never followed up on. Was that it? Was that why she left? Had I convinced myself I'd be dead within the year, and just gave up? Did she give up too? No, that couldn't be the full story. Because if she truly thought I was dying, why wouldn't she have stayed? Why wouldn't she have tried? Bryony was many things, cold, calculating, detached, but she wasn't cruel for the sake of it. Unless, Weston, I needed answers. But first, I needed to know who the hell that man in the hotel suite was. The one who gave me the envelope and said she'd been asking for me. He knew things about me he shouldn't. Real name, last known address, where I'd be at what time. That kind of access doesn't come from snooping. That's private investigator level. Or worse, legal. I checked into a small roadside motel just off the interstate and locked the door twice. I turned the envelope inside out, looking for any marking, logo, watermark, anything, and finally saw it. On the inside flap, faintly embossed, CR and Fields. Crisis Estate Planning and Confidential Advisory. What the hell was estate planning doing involved in this? I looked them up. It took digging, the kind of digging you do on encrypted search engines and obscure indexes that don't show up on Google. What I found made my blood run cold. CR and Fields specialized in something called legacy disassociation. They didn't just write wills. They helped people erase connections, clean breaks, high-profile divorces, hidden heirs, posthumous message delivery. One article even mentioned fake deaths and identity laundering for terminal clients who wanted to rebuild clean slates for their families before passing. Suddenly, Bryony's disappearance didn't seem like abandonment. It felt orchestrated. And I had a sinking suspicion I wasn't just the ex she ghosted. I was the ghost. I was her unfinished chapter. But now I was back. And if what I suspected was true, if that boy in the photo was mine, then she hadn't just kept a child from me. She'd rewritten our history and left me buried in the old draft. The building didn't match the website. CR and Fields' online presence made it look like some posh skyscraper firm with glass walls and espresso bars. The kind of place where tycoons rewrite their wills between stock market calls. But in reality, Their office was tucked into the basement of an aging brick structure behind a shuttered Thai restaurant. The plaque outside the entrance was barely visible. No windows. No reception desk. Just a buzzer and a camera that whirred when it moved. I hesitated with my hand over the buzzer. What exactly was I hoping to find? Confirmation that Bryony had rewritten our life like it was a legal contract? That she'd paid people to erase me while playing happy family with Weston? I pressed the buzzer anyway. A voice came through after a pause. Appointment. I swallowed. Not exactly. Someone from your office approached me. I was told Bryony Ashland left something for me. Silence. Then a click. The door opened. Inside, it felt colder than outside. The lighting was low, artificial. The woman who greeted me didn't give her name. She simply asked for mine, then typed something into a terminal behind the desk. Her eyes flicked up. Marlen Devick? I nodded. She motioned for me to follow. We walked down a narrow hallway until she opened a heavy steel door that looked more suited for a bank vault than a legal office. Inside was a long, polished table, a small lamp, a digital recorder, and a sealed manila folder with my name on it. Again, my real name. Not the alias I'd used for years. They'd known all along. She left without another word. The door shut with a deep metallic clunk. I sat down. The folder was thicker than I expected. I opened it slowly. Inside, a printed transcript of a recorded statement. Legal documents bearing Bryony's signature. Financial spreadsheets. A single thumb drive taped to a note that read, "Only open if you choose to understand everything." But it was the first page of the transcript that broke me. It was dated 3 years ago. Transcript. Prepared for delivery upon subject's reappearance or legal confirmation of life status. Her voice. Typed out in courier font. If you're reading this, it means you didn't die. Or worse, it means you never were going to. Either way, you're probably angry. And you deserve to be. But before you let that anger swallow you whole, please listen. I skimmed ahead. Paragraph after paragraph. Apologies. Explanations. Timelines. Then the sentence that made my blood freeze. You were misdiagnosed. The first doctor was wrong. I found out too late. You'd already disappeared. I slammed the folder shut. I couldn't breathe. All those nights in the cold. All those years I thought she abandoned me. She thought I was the one who walked away. She had believed I left her to die alone. In her mind, I had accepted my death and chosen to spare her the pain. But that wasn't what happened. Because what I didn't remember, what I had completely erased from my memory, was the second opinion. I had received it. I'd gone to another clinic the week after my collapse. And they told me I was fine. A bacterial infection. Aggressive, yes. But treatable. But I never told her. Why? Because I had already left. Somewhere in the fog of self-pity and guilt, I'd convinced myself that disappearing was noble. That it was cleaner. That it would somehow protect her from watching me die. I was wrong. And so was she. And Weston? He wasn't just a rebound. He was the safety net. The man she let into her life because she thought she'd been left for dead. But the documents in that folder said something else too. Financial ledgers. Property transfers. Custodial filings. Hidden bank accounts. Bryony never put Weston on her accounts. She never gave him legal guardianship of her son. She'd created a trust in my name. She still believed I was the father. And worse, she had written a posthumous custody request stating that if I ever returned, her son was to be placed under my protection. Even after everything, she trusted me more than she trusted him. And that meant something was very, very wrong. Because if Weston didn't know that, he'd never let it stand. And suddenly, everything inside me flipped. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about danger. About a child. And maybe, just maybe, about redemption. I didn't go back to the motel that night. I couldn't. After reading the transcripts, the financial documents, the custody plans, I felt like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. Not a stranger's, but a version of mine that had continued without me, made its own decisions, written its own endings, and now expected me to step back into the narrative like nothing had happened. But the story had teeth, and I could feel them closing in. I parked outside a diner that stayed open until 2 a.m. and just sat in the car, watching the flicker of the neon sign in the window. It blinked every few seconds, like a pulse. I hadn't touched my wallet in hours. The photo of the boy, Bryony's son, was still wedged between the passenger seat and the console. I kept glancing at it, at his face, his smile, his eyes. They were mine. Not maybe, not possibly. No DNA test needed. I knew what I was seeing. That kid looked more like my childhood photos than I did. And the terrifying part wasn't that I had a son. It was the realization that Weston had probably known all along. And he'd kept it quiet, which meant he wasn't just a backup. He was a threat. I didn't even remember falling asleep in the car, but I woke up at sunrise to a sharp knock on my window. I jumped, heart hammering, and stared into the face of a man in a black wool coat and sunglasses, even though it was barely morning. He wasn't police. His stance was too relaxed, too confident, and he didn't identify himself. He just tilted his head toward the sidewalk and said calmly, "He'd like to see you." "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. He didn't answer, just turned and walked. I followed. Maybe that was stupid. But the thing about walking around with your life already in ruins is, you stop caring about what might finish the job. We turned down an alley beside a closed antique shop, and there he was. Weston, leaning against the rear bumper of a matte black luxury car, sipping from a silver thermos like we were about to play tennis together instead of confront a 5-year-old betrayal. "You look older," he said. I didn't respond. He took a long sip, then nodded. "So, you're alive." I wasn't sure. I narrowed my eyes. "Bryony thought I was dead. You didn't." "No," he said quietly. "I didn't." He didn't even flinch. Didn't try to deny it. Weston wasn't a coward. That made him dangerous. I felt my voice crack. "You knew I was alive, and you let her grieve like that?" He set the thermos down on the trunk. "She didn't grieve, Marlen. She restructured. There's a difference." I nearly lunged at him right there. But something in his tone stopped me. Cold. Calculated. Like he was already 10 moves ahead. I realized in that moment, this wasn't a conversation. This was a warning. "I read the documents," I said. "I know about the trust. The custody instructions." He shrugged. "Then you know why I needed to speak to you. You're not on the documents." "No," he agreed. "But I'm on the leash." "You think she kept me around just for fun?" "She was scared. Of you. Of herself. Of what she'd done. And now that you've resurfaced, everything she built is going to fall apart." He stepped forward, just a little too close. "I've spent 5 years holding things together while she fell apart, while you played ghost. I paid the bills. Took her to chemo. Kept the business alive. Protected that kid like he was my own. And now you want to roll in and claim your crown?" I stared at him. "He is my own." His jaw tightened. That one sentence broke the calm he was holding. Just slightly. I saw it in his eye, the way it twitched before he forced a smirk back onto his face. "Funny," he muttered. "You think blood still means anything." That was it. That was the moment I understood. He'd known all along. And he had no intention of letting go. Not of the kid. Not of Bryony. Not of the empire they'd rebuilt after erasing me. "You're planning something," I said quietly. Weston just smiled. "You should have stayed dead, Marlen." And then he walked away. I stood there in that alley, heart thudding, hands clenched, knowing 2 things with absolute certainty. First, Weston didn't come to warn me. He came to test me, to see how much I knew, to decide what kind of threat I still was. And second, he was already moving to cut me out of everything, permanently. And the only person who could stop him was lying in a hospital bed, hooked to machines, unconscious. Bryony. I had to get to her before Weston did. Because whatever she'd buried in that trust, he was going to bury for good. The hospital smelled like bleach and last chances. I hate hospitals. Always have. Even before all this. But walking through those sliding glass doors that morning, I realized something darker. I wasn't scared of death. I was scared of what Bryony might say when she woke up. Or worse, what she wouldn't. I hadn't told the nurse who I was. I didn't need to. One glance at the security desk, and the woman behind it called someone. A few minutes later, a younger nurse in navy scrubs appeared and said flatly, "You're him." I nodded. She didn't ask for ID. Just led me through a hallway that felt too quiet. Like the kind of silence you only get around dying people. "Has she said anything?" I asked. "She came in semi-conscious," the nurse said without looking at me. Her blood pressure dropped. Heart irregularity. The stress wasn't good. She hasn't spoken since last night. I swallowed hard. Did she know I was coming? She requested that if a man named Marlen ever showed up, she was to be notified immediately. "And Weston?" I asked. "Has he been here?" The nurse's face twitched. "Not since early this morning. We didn't tell him you were coming." I exhaled. That alone made me trust her. Room 317. It didn't look like a room for a dying woman. The window blinds were open. The sheets were crisp. A vase of lilies sat on the side table, wilting at the edges. And Bryony looked like someone who had lived 5 lifetimes in 5 years. She was thinner, fragile, cheekbones sharper than I remembered, but her hair still curled slightly at the edges like it used to when she let it dry on its own. Her face, even in rest, looked conflicted, as if sleep itself was arguing with her subconscious. I stood at the edge of the bed and whispered, "Bryony." "Nothing." Then softer, "It's me." Her lips moved. It wasn't a word, not really, but there was recognition. Her eyelids fluttered. Her fingers twitched. I leaned in. Then came the faintest whisper, so weak I had to replay it in my mind just to confirm I'd heard it. "Don't let him take him." My heart nearly stopped. She didn't say a name, but she didn't have to. I knew who him was, and who take meant. She was still fighting Weston, even now. I sat down, barely breathing, as the machines behind her beeped and pulsed in slow rhythm. I wanted to scream at her, to ask why she never tried to reach me, to ask if she ever loved Weston, to ask if the boy, our son, even knew I existed. But she was already fading again. Her eyes fluttered, then closed. Her chest rose slower. The nurse peeked in. I turned to her. "She's trying to say something." She's been in and out," the nurse replied, her voice soft now. "But there's something you should see. She left it for you." She handed me a small, sealed envelope. Handwritten. No address. No date. Inside was a letter. I'm not sure I can describe what it felt like reading Bryony's words after all this time. Written not to manipulate or shame me, but to reach me, finally, across everything that had fractured between us. "Marlen, if you're holding this, you came back. You lived. I don't even know what that means for us now, but I need you to know something. Weston lied. Not just to me. To all of us. He knew you weren't dying. He saw the second diagnosis. He saw the email. He deleted it before I could read it. He made me think you ran away to die alone. He said it was selfish. He made me hate you for it. And I believed him. That's on me. I was angry and scared, and he was there, always in the right place, always with answers. It wasn't love. It was dependency, and I regret every second of it. But our son is not his. He never was, and he knows it. If I'm gone, please don't let Weston near him. He's already tried. Legally, financially, he's prepared. But if you show up before he buries me, the custody terms and the trust still hold. You have one chance to stop this. You have to fight. You have to show up this time, Marlen." I sat there, crushed. All these years, I blamed her. But she had been played, too. Weston orchestrated everything. He took advantage of chaos, turned grief into control, used Bryony's illness to insert himself into the boy's life, into her will, her business, her every move. And now that I was back, I was a liability. The nurse stepped in again. "She's sleeping again," she said gently. "But she knew you were here. Can you keep this visit off the record?" She didn't answer, just nodded once. I left the room, numb, the letter shaking in my hands. And then I saw him. Weston, waiting near the elevator, arms crossed, looking like he'd just stepped out of a board meeting. Calm, calculated. "Did she wake up?" he asked flatly. I stared at him. "You knew I wasn't dying." He didn't blink. "You shouldn't have come back." I stepped closer. "She left everything to me." "Not legally," he replied. "Not yet." I laughed. "Just once. You know what the difference is between us, Weston?" He said nothing. I was gone 5 years, and she still trusted me more than she ever trusted you. He clenched his jaw, and I walked past him. But I wasn't done. Because if Weston wanted to play this through lawyers, fake signatures, and backroom threats, he was about to find out I'd learned something in those 5 years of being invisible. How to burn everything down without anyone seeing the smoke. It started the next morning. I was still in the motel room, sitting on the edge of the bed, Bryony's letter in one hand and the hospital visitor badge in the other, when my phone vibrated. A number I didn't recognize, but I answered anyway. "Mr. Devick," the voice said smoothly. "This is Graham Teller from Teller and Meeks Family Law. I'm representing Mr. Weston Rowe. We were informed of your presence at Memorial Park Hospital. We'd like to formally request you cease all unsupervised contact with Bryony Ashland and her child until a legal review can be conducted." It was too polite, too fast. They'd been ready for this. "I'm his father," I said flatly. There was a pause. "That's not currently verified, sir. And in the absence of a court order, your involvement may compromise the guardianship process." I hung up before he could finish the sentence. But I understood what they were doing. Weston was pulling strings, hard and fast, trying to get ahead of the narrative before I could legally assert myself. And if I didn't move quickly, he'd paint me as unstable, a ghost from the past showing up to disrupt a grieving woman's final days. Except he'd forgotten something. Bryony had written protections into that trust. Not for her, for our son. And she never signed the last amendment Weston's lawyers drafted. The one that would have officially named him guardian if I didn't return before her death. Her lawyer never filed it. And that changed everything. I drove straight to CR and Fields. This time, I didn't wait to be buzzed in. I banged on the door until the assistant from earlier opened it, wide-eyed and cautious. I need access to the emergency clause, I told her. The one tied to the custodial trust. She said if I ever came back before she died. It activates automatically, she said quickly. She left a pre-recorded video. If you're present, we're legally obligated to show it to you. 15 minutes later, I was back in the same vault-like room, heart pounding. The lights dimmed, and a screen lowered from the ceiling. Then, there she was. Bryony. Pre-illness. Healthier. Confident. Sitting in a leather chair, arms crossed, staring straight into the camera like she was staring into me. Marlen, if you're watching this, I didn't think you would be, but I hoped. I needed to make sure that if you came back, our son wouldn't be handed over to someone he doesn't belong to. Weston helped me through a dark time. I won't deny that. But he never loved our son the way you would. He loved control. He loved being needed. And when he realized I wasn't going to sign the final documents, he got angry. I have no idea how much of this you'll even get to see. He's good at burying things. But if this plays, it means you have a chance. She leaned forward. Her expression softened. His name is Everin. And he's not just yours biologically. He's yours because I raised him on stories about the kind of man you were. The man I thought I lost. Don't let Weston twist that. Please, don't let him win. The screen went black. I sat in the dark for several minutes, hands shaking, throat locked. Everin. His name was Everin. Somewhere out there, my son, the boy who looked like me, the boy Weston was trying to claim through manipulation and legal gray areas, was probably being told that the man who showed up yesterday was no one important. And unless I stopped it, that would become truth. By that afternoon, Weston's legal team had filed for emergency custody. The court hearing was scheduled for 48 hours later. They were citing emotional instability, abandonment history, and lack of parental presence. Classic character assassination. Efficient. Brutal. But I had something they didn't. Bryony's video. And I had one more card left to play. When I returned to the hospital that night, I didn't go to Bryony's room first. I went to the pediatric wing. Everin was in the playroom, seated cross-legged on a blue carpet, playing with a set of building blocks, watched by a young nurse. And when he turned and looked up at me, something in my chest cracked open. Not recognition. Not yet. Just this strange stillness. A gravity. As if somehow, even in his innocence, he felt something. He stood. Are you my mom's friend? I nodded slowly. Something like that. He looked at me with wide, curious eyes. You look like me. Tears blurred my vision. I knelt in front of him, struggling to find words. Before I could answer, the nurse returned and said gently, visiting hours are almost over. I left without pushing it. I couldn't risk scaring him or alerting Weston before the hearing. But as I walked out of the hospital, one thing was perfectly clear. They had tried to erase me. Erase the truth. Erase a father. But what Weston didn't know was that the next time I walked into that courtroom, I wouldn't just be another ghost from the past. I'd be the storm that rewrote the ending. The courthouse was colder than it needed to be. Big windows, long benches, that faint hum of HVAC and tension, the kind you only hear when lives are being weighed by people in tailored suits with sharp pens and no memory of what love looks like. Weston was already there when I walked in. 3 rows of attorneys. A stack of documents. He wore the same smug expression he always did, tight-lipped, confident, like the outcome had already been decided. And for a moment, I thought maybe it had. The judge, a tall, no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, asked me to confirm my name and relation to the child. I did. She asked where I had been for 5 years. That part hurt. I thought I was dying, I said. I was misdiagnosed. I left to protect the woman I loved. But I was wrong. And when I found out, I stayed away because I didn't think she wanted me back. I was ashamed. The courtroom was silent. Even Weston's attorneys stopped shuffling papers. And now, the judge asked. Now I know she never stopped waiting, I said. She left me instructions. She left me the truth. I handed over the documents, the video, the trust agreements, and finally, Bryony's handwritten letter. The judge took her time. She paused the hearing for 20 minutes just to watch the video twice. When we returned, her voice was calm, but final. Mr. Rowe, she said, turning to Weston, you knowingly withheld a corrected diagnosis from MS. Ashland and interfered with legal documents that had not yet been finalized. One of Weston's lawyers tried to object, but she raised a hand. You manipulated a grieving woman into believing she had been abandoned, when in fact, you ensured that abandonment by erasing communication. That's not just immoral. That's calculated coercion. Weston didn't say a word, but for the first time, his jaw wasn't clenched in control, it was twitching in panic. The judge turned back to me. Mr. Devick, per the emergency custodial clause in the attached documentation, legal guardianship of the child, Everin Ashland Devick, is awarded to you, effective immediately. The court will oversee transition and supervision, but this ruling is not temporary. I didn't cry, not until I was out of the building, because when I stepped outside, Everin was there, holding the hand of the nurse who had brought him. She crouched down, whispered something to him, and stepped away. He looked up at me again, same eyes, same crooked smirk I had as a kid. You're my dad, he said like it was already a fact. I am, I whispered. He took my hand without hesitation. We didn't go back to the motel, or the hospital, or anywhere near the people who had spent so long rewriting our story. We left town, not to run, but to begin. Bryony passed away 3 days later. I got to speak to her once more. Her voice was faint, but her words were clear. You came back, she whispered. I never stopped being yours, I said, even when you thought I had. She smiled, and then she was gone. She didn't leave behind wealth, or fame, or a legacy people would write about in magazines. She left something more rare, a second chance, a son who now knew who his father really was, and a man, broken, beaten, erased, who learned that being forgotten doesn't mean you're finished. We moved to a quiet place outside Helena. Trees, lakes, no cameras. I work with my hands again. Everin builds forts and tells me stories he makes up on the fly. Every night, he asks me if I'll be there in the morning. And every night, I tell him the same thing. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time.